But when you get Leaf Filter, you'll never have to worry about cleaning clogged gutters again. Get started today by visiting leaffilter.com/deal to schedule your free...
WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Listen, watch, and stream at wsmn.live.
ABC News, I'm Chuck Severson. After the White House Situation Room meeting on Israel and Iran, sources familiar with it tell ABC News President Trump told top advisors that he approved of attack plans for Iran, but said he was waiting to see if Iran would be willing to discuss ending their nuclear program. Earlier today, Republican senators were lining up behind the president. South Carolina's Lindsey Graham.
I've never felt better about the end of the Iran nuclear program. It's very close.
Connecticut Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal.
I have no sense, no confidence that we have adequately prepared U.S. personnel in the region.
A jury finding Karen Reed guilty of drunk driving, but not guilty on all other charges, including second-degree murder and the death of her boyfriend. She gets probation. The FDA approves a new shot offering near-perfect HIV protection with just 2 injections a year. This is ABC News. The mercury in parts of the Southwest hit above 100 degrees today. A big lift is scheduled for Saturday, weather permitting. A giant floating crane barge is set to hoist the British super yacht that sank off Sicily last August, killing 7. The sinking left the UK tech magnate Mike Lynch, his daughter, and 5 others dead. The salvage company says the ship is 184 feet long and is 164 feet down. This weekend marks the 50th anniversary of the release of Jaws, considered Hollywood's first summer blockbuster movie. Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries shark biologist Greg Scomo says since that movie sparked fear of going in the water, public attitudes toward sharks have softened. His advice, stay away from their food.
Because white sharks like to feed on seals, which occur in big numbers off the coast of New England and Canada, white sharks are approaching shore in greater numbers because the seal populations are coming back.
Chuck Severson, ABC News.
Are you over 50 and constantly feeling tired, bloated, or just a little off? Don't ignore it. Those could be signs that your liver is crying for help. As we age, our liver, which is essential for metabolism, digestion, immunity, and detoxification, needs extra support and protection. If neglected, it can leave you feeling sluggish and constantly off your game. That's where Active Liver from New Nordic comes in. Available in easy-to-take tablets or delicious gummies, Active Liver combines powerful natural ingredients like turmeric, milk thistle, and globe artichoke extract to help support healthy liver function. With Active Liver, you're giving your body an essential daily defense against toxins from alcohol, fatty foods, and sweets, helping you reclaim your energy, improve digestion, lose the bloat, and strengthen your immunity so you can look and feel your best again. Protect your liver and give it the support that it deserves by making Active Liver from New Nordic part of your daily wellness routine. Find Active Liver in stores at your local CVS, Meijer Grocery, or online at Amazon or NewNordicUSA.com.
The views and opinions of the following show do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
Welcome to the Common Sense Conservatives, a political discussion group about current events and other government-related matters every Wednesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Right here on WSMN 1590 AM, WSMN 95.3 FM, and streaming live on wsmn.live. Making sense of the inverted reality we are subject to every day, the Common Sense Conservatives are here to help bring you back to reality. Now, your hosts, Chris Wyatt, Todd McKinley, and John Grothman.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Common Sense Conservatives. Apparently, Mr. Todd McKinley will not be joining us this first hour. He has some important things to do. I don't know what could be more important than being here in the Common Sense Conservatives, but he does have some obligations he's got to deal with. So we'll miss him on this first hour. Hopefully, we'll see him in the second hour. Chris, I got to tell you, I was offended by the No Kings protest because, as a king myself, what do they mean by this? What do they mean, no kings? As a fellow king, how do you feel about that?
Well, I was pretty offended by it because these idiots can have their stupid little temper tantrums any day of the week, but the United States Army only celebrates its 250th anniversary once every 250 years. So the disgraceful anti-American, hate-wanking, scumbag, unpatriotic, leftist losers can get on a bus and we'll take them down to Miami and put them on a dinghy and send them to Cuba where they belong.
There you go. Yeah, I kind of think it's funny because they're protesting Trump on such a day. And was it not Biden who approved this parade? Was it not Biden who set the funding aside for this parade? Like last year, the year before, I'm not sure which.
Well, the event has been planned for 2 years by the U.S. Army. The parade was initially muted under the Biden regime, if I understand correctly, but Trump brought it back. And they make this whole thing out about Donald Trump instead of appreciating us. And I have zero respect for these people, and I can't even tolerate them anymore. I mean, these sort of people that you see them on the side of the road and you just want to spit in their general direction because they're vile, subhuman, disgusting pukes. I mean, we only get one day to celebrate this. This is such an amazing accomplishment, the greatest nation in the history of humankind. And these slime balls with their Trump derangement syndrome want to ruin it for us. It's not the Army's fault that Donald Trump was born on the 14th of June. It's also Flag Day. You know, this is unbelievable. These people have no respect for any dignity or anything. They're not Americans. They claim to be Americans with their little lofty ideals, but they're really just a bunch of hateful shrews who hate anybody that disagrees with them. That may sound ironic coming from me right now because I'm really just spitting pestilence and bile at them, which is what they deserve. But the reality is that conservatives don't run around and act like they do. These people are shameful. You know, on the little day we get to murder babies day, we don't run out and protest against them. We let them have the little free speech on there. We like to murder babies. Oh, I'm sorry. That's choice. That's what that's called. Choice. We like to murder babies day. No, it's just look, I've had enough of this nonsense, John. It's time that we stamp this idiocy out by exposing it. These people for the ghouls, the death loving ghouls that like to murder children in the womb. By the way, you know, we need immigrants. Why? Because our birth rate's negative. Yeah, because you kill 800,000 babies per year. Let's start with that one and go from there. Good Lord.
Yeah, their arguments were ridiculous. But speaking of Trump derangement syndrome, we do have somebody waiting to come in that would like to talk about Trump derangement syndrome. Are you ready for that?
Well, yeah, and hopefully the doc will give us a little bit of reassurance here because really these people, there aren't enough psychiatrists to treat the millions of lunatics in this country who have this disease. But let's bring her in.
Awesome. So Dr. Carol Lieberman, who has accomplishments so long, would probably take the entire hour to cover all of them. How you doing, Carol Lieberman?
Fine, thank you.
And for those who are not familiar with you, would you like to give us a quick rundown about yourself, your history, and what you're all about?
Sure. I am a Beverly Hills psychiatrist. I treat patients, and I'm also a forensic psychiatrist, meaning being an expert witness in criminal and civil cases. I'm an author of 4 books, 2 on terrorism and 2 on relationships, including a lot of awards for the books, including my latest, a 5-time award winner, Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, Oh My, How to Protect Your Child in a Time of Terror. And which is particularly relevant today as we're about to enter, or we've already entered, or Israel has a war. And what else? I come from New York. I'm now living in California, but my being born and bred in New York led me to become what I call the terrorist therapist after 9/11, and that's why I do a lot of I'm involved with a lot of things in regard to terrorism. I created music videos for the anniversary and also for 10/7, and what else? I've helped people, in America cope with terrorism, and in England, and in France, Paris, and now I'm volunteering and helping people in Israel by Zoom. So that's, and of course, I do a lot of television. I do a lot of podcasts, radio, to help people, to give people insight into what's going on in the world.
Awesome. So, seems like there's a lot of terrorism in the world. Where's this terrorism coming from?
Where is it coming from?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's constant anymore all over the globe. We see it constantly. I mean, where's all this terrorism? It's not coming from the politically right, from what I can see. It's not conservatives that are ushering this in here. So what's going on?
Talking about radical Islamist terrorism. I mean, yes, we do have. For example, the students, protesting and so on, and being pro-Hamas and anti-Israel and all of that. Those are domestic terrorists. But terrorism began, over 1,000 years ago in the Middle East with radical Islamist terrorists who began teaching their children from the time that they're toddlers to hate Israel, to hate Jews, not just Jews though, to hate anybody who is a non-believer in Islam. And so this has been, they've infiltrated Europe. I mean, Europe doesn't look like Europe anymore. It's really gotten to be a critical mass of so many people in Europe who are, like, particularly in France and in the UK and Germany and Belgium, they are just raping women and men, for that matter, boys, and doing various kinds of attacks like every day. We don't hear about it from the mainstream media in America, but you can see it online. And people are so shocked to hear about this. What? They're doing what in Europe? And that is what they, of course, plan to do in America. When 9/11 happened, and I first, and that's when I decided that I would become the terrorist therapist and help people cope with terrorism. I knew it was going to be the most important, the biggest problem that we would have to face in our lives. And but I didn't really know that much about terrorism. And so I, did a lot of research, and I went to a lot of conferences and so on, and spoke to people who were had been, experts in this field. And what they said, and I'll never forget this, what they said back then in these conferences and lectures and so on, was about how terrorists are invading America, not just physically. I mean, we do have cells all over America now. But not just that, but they have been climbing in specific areas of our culture where they get a lot of power. So politics, of course, is one, like the Squad. And in education, which is why our kids are being taught, the wrong, all kinds of wrong information in school, not even acknowledging 9/11 in a lot of schools. And in media, so that they could present a skewed view of what terrorism is, and to not show what's happening in the rest of the world, what terrorists are doing. So politics, education, media, law to some degree, in various important positions. And over the years since 9/11, they have been gradually creeping up to have higher positions in these areas, and that is how they have a lot of power over what's happening in America. Minnesota, for example. There are so many cities that are essentially mostly Muslim, and I'm not saying that all Muslims are terrorists and not all terrorists are Muslim. However, they and yes, now they've combined with leftists in politics, and although there are things that they really don't agree on, but they see that it's helpful if they join forces, because then they're more powerful and could have more control. I mean, obviously, terrorists, radical Islamist terrorists, don't believe in LGBTQ plus, whereas leftists do, for example. But they're just kind of ignoring that for the time being.
So they would they're just trying to ride along, and once they're empowered, then they would start attacking that group of people.
Right. Then they'd attack each other. Right.
Yeah, I kind of thought it'd be nice to cover radical Muslim terrorism, because just saying it plainly, it just it just needs to be said, I think, and from a psychological perspective, would you classify Islam as a religion if they're encouraging people to cause harm to other people?
Well, I mean, the Quran does say that you have to smite the unbelievers, the infidels. So, that is a religion. I think you're trying to say it's not a very peace, although they try to say that it's a religion of peace. Clearly, there are things in it, in the Quran, that aren't very peaceful. But, it's particularly, it's obviously getting to be more and more important. And Americans, I've been doing this, working hard on this. I spent a lot of my time, as I said, writing books on terrorism, doing speaking engagements. I do a podcast called The Terrorist Therapist Show. So I do all of these things to try to wake people up to the danger. And yet so many Americans just have their head in the sand, and they don't want to believe that terrorists could hurt them. When Netanyahu came some months ago and talked before Congress, he talked about how this, like, the college students who are protesting really are so ignorant. They're fools. They're puppets of the terrorists. And because, he gave us an example, the Gays for Gaza. Now, he said Gays for Gaza is like chickens for KFC, because Gaza terrorists, are very much against LGBTQ plus. And so if you were gay and in Gaza or any other Middle Eastern country except for Israel, you'd be thrown off a roof. So what they're so ignorant, they don't know what they're saying, and why they're doing it. Well, there are a couple of reasons. I mean, the people who are from those countries who are in college are doing it, of course, to protect to protect the so-called Palestinians. But even the Americans have been taught since they've been in school, at least since grade school or middle school, they've been taught that there are only two kinds of people in the world: the oppressed and the oppressors. And they've defined, or the school teachers have helped them define, Israel and Jewish people as the oppressors, and the poor Palestinians as the oppressed. So they identify with the oppressed, and that's why they, think they have to speak out for Palestinians. It's really, but so it has the level, the danger in America due to terrorism has been gradually creeping up each year. Now we even have a man running for mayor in New York City who is basically a terrorist. And it's in a lot of different ways. It's kind of coming to a head, and people aren't paying attention to it, and that's very dangerous.
I agree. Yeah, I was alluding to that because it seems to me anything that's going to force you to believe the way they believe by force doesn't really fall under the classification of a religion to me. That's more of a cult, like Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism. Those aren't religions of force, and I'm listening to a guy who is describing Islam as not a religion of peace, but a religion of justice. But then who's deciding what justice is but them themselves? And it's like throwing gays off roofs. You don't believe in that, and a lot of people don't. But you don't murder people over that. Seems like that's a whole different violation of your religious belief. Well, maybe not Islam. I don't know, but many religions don't believe in murder. So yeah, that's why I went that direction.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, and I'll make a segue to Trump derangement syndrome.
There you go.
Yeah, the segue is that, and we'll, of course, we can talk about the many facets of Trump derangement syndrome, and and it started off when in his first term, but it's nothing like it is now. It's much more dangerous, serious, aggressive, violent. It's now, but there are some things where, it's one thing to have these protests. And for some judges to decide that they don't agree with Trump, that they don't want to deport some of the people that Trump is trying to deport. I mean, illegal aliens and people who present a danger to America, and particularly if they're illegal aliens and so on. But so that's one way. These are people who have Trump derangement syndrome, and they're stopping it not because it really makes sense from a legal point of view, but because they're against Trump. And I'll give you a lot of other examples, but what's happening now in the Middle East is an example of how dangerous, how critical it is to not have Trump derangement syndrome, to stamp out Trump derangement syndrome, because there are people like Tucker Carlson, who, I always liked. I was on his show. People are who you wouldn't expect are sort of going crazy and are against Trump, not really for any rational reason, but because, well, I'll explain. I mean, Trump, let me give you the definition first. It's an irrational, quasi-psychotic hatred of anything Trump, resulting in rage and over-the-top efforts to destroy him and his work. So, it is very, it can be very dangerous and serious. And we're seeing that now. People who are saying that Trump shouldn't help Israel, shouldn't get involved in the war, they come up with reasons why, but really it is just part of Trump derangement syndrome, because Israel is our ally. There is no question, and Iran is our enemy. And so there's really, it's not brain surgery. There's really no, and Iran is very dangerous. Israel is like the canary in the coal mine. They're over there, and yes, the radical Islamists want to get rid of Israel first, but they're coming here. They want to come here, and they, as I was saying earlier, it's not just about Jews. Anybody who doesn't follow their religion. So I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer that Trump should be on the side of Israel and help Israel and be against Iran, who does have nuclear weapons. And so people who are coming up against him now, with their Trump derangement syndrome, are really putting America in a very dangerous spot, because if he doesn't get rid of Iran's, help get rid of Iran, or help Israel to get rid of Iran's nuclear weapons, then we are in danger, especially if China and Russia join them. So it's not just about silly things. It's not just about throwing your shoe at the television if Trump is on it. That's a mild case. That's one of the symptoms of a mild case of Trump derangement syndrome. But there are more serious cases, like now, trying to get everyone to go against Trump, to stop Trump from helping Israel against Iran. Now, if it hadn't been for Obama in the first place, becoming the BFF of the leaders in Iran and other Middle East countries, we wouldn't be in this predicament in the first place. It was that Obama, who is very, very anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, got us into this problem when he was president.
You mean like giving $500 billion cash to Iran, so they can fund them and they can use that money to fund the Houthis and so on and so forth, and attack Israel?
Yes, exactly. And be responsible for October 7th and yes, all of that.
Yeah. Chris, you were looking like you wanted to jump in here on this.
I'm always looking like I want to jump in. So usually you guys have me lead these things.
Oh.
So that's fine. I'm just taking my time. I was letting John get through that. So, Doc, I want to talk about Trump derangement syndrome in some depth here. But I mean, really what we're talking about here is Chamberlain's Peace in Our Time, these lunatic, theater of appeasement, surrender monkeys that think that you can deal with these fanatics on a level playing ground. I'm a little bit disappointed President Trump right now talking about Iran coming back and negotiating. His unconditional surrender was the statement that I wanted to see. I thought that was brilliant on Truth Social, because this regime has imprisoned, it has abused, it has murdered unlawfully, extrajudicially, thousands of people over the past 40 plus years since they overthrew the Shah. It's an evil, evil regime. And they're just a bunch of surrender monkeys here. They're the John Kerrys of the world. They're the Barack Obamas of the world. But the Trump derangement syndrome isn't exactly the first iteration of this. Remember, we had Bush derangement syndrome when Bush was president. it seems to be a pathology in people on a certain segment of the political left, and even some on the right. We had the Never Trumpers. What drives this ignorance and stupidity? And before you answer, I mean, I'm so sick of hearing that Trump is a dictator. He's a monarch. I'm sorry, the guy left office and then he won another election, but he disobeys the rule of law. Yet every time in his first term, when these lunatics took him to court, to the Ninth Circuit or to another court, to illegitimately use the courts to hinder the power of the president granted under the Constitution and the War Powers Act and the legislation, every time the Trump administration stopped what they're doing, they went to the courts, they won, and eventually implemented those things. They're doing the same thing now. But the problem is that these people keep calling him lawless. I don't see the lawlessness here. Unlike Biden, who broke the Immigration Nationality Act on a daily basis and illegally imported tens of millions of criminal alien invaders in our country and undermined our nation, fraudulently allowing criminals who enter this country illegally to apply for asylum, which is not how the law is written. They don't talk about Biden violating the law, but they demonically, and I'm talking about not just the people on the left, but also these, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski's and Mitch McConnell clowns. What is with these people? Is there someone tinkling in their cornflakes, or where is it because just Trump is a threat to their self-enrichment, self-aggrandizement, and craving political power? Maybe that's what it is.
Well, for the most part, and I just want to say something, I think what Trump has been saying currently, I don't know that, I think some of it might well be to catch Iran off guard. I don't know that he really means it, that he's still willing to have a treaty, because you can't make a treaty with people who lie. The Prophet Muhammad said war is deceit. And so any treaty that you would sign is not even worth the paper that it's printed on. So I'm hopeful that he knows that.
Well, I imagine he is probably. It's interesting you mentioned that with what you just quoted there. This is right out of Sun Tzu, right out of the Artha Shastra on how you do geostrategic relations. You deceive until you achieve your ends. Ultimately, what you want to achieve in the end is what matters, not how you get there. And that's exactly what the Iranians are doing.
Uh-huh. So what makes people, who gets Trump derangement syndrome and why? First of all, anybody can get it's a equal opportunity syndrome. Anybody could have it, but it is more likely. I've described two groups that are most likely to have it. First, and one is a certain type of man, and the other is a certain type of woman. For men, it's men who have low self-esteem, men who compare themselves to Trump, and Trump has all the stereotypical things you're supposed to want and achieve as a man. A beautiful wife, a lot of money, success, power, and intelligence, all the perks in life. And so men who are more, who have low self-esteem are more likely to be angry at Trump for having all these things and feel like angry that they haven't achieved it and they don't feel they can achieve it. So that's one group. Women, it is particularly women, it's college educated white women who are particularly susceptible to Trump derangement syndrome, and women who, in general, feminist women. It started with the pussy hats, and these kinds of feminist women who have problems with men, and who have decided, that Trump hates women, and so they are more likely to express it. And there are things, on TikTok, for example, there are things, people who put things up on TikTok telling women, this is when he was during the campaign and when he got elected, when he won the election, telling women that they should they should leave and or poison their man, their husband or whoever they're dating, if they voted for Trump. And these are women in general who have problems with relationships. So they're projecting, all of these people are projecting, and in general, people are projecting their own frustrations about not getting things in their life that they want, or being angry at things in their life, and projecting all this, blaming Trump for all the problems that they have in their life.
You know, it's interesting because some of these are the same very people who fell for the Messiah complex for an unknown Illinois senator who got elected to the Senate on an illegitimate election campaign by using dirty tricks to undermine his opponent, Jack Ryan. Is that was his name? The Republican who ran against him, but who used to be married to what's her name? Jerry Ryan, the 7 of 9 actress. And then their divorce records were unsealed illegally and spread rumors about their open sex marriage. You know, he's the same sort of people who had this Messiah complex about this unknown loser from Illinois who somehow managed to become a Manchurian candidate and undermine this country as president of the United States. And then many of them, after voting for him in 2008, about 5 million of them abandoned him the next time around in 2012. But they still have the audacity to act this way about President Trump. I don't really get the Messiah complex that was attached to Obama, his hope and change. All he did was change America for the worst. And he made it hopeless for many people. It destroyed race relations and put this country on a path to misery. You know, John was alluding, John's number is a little bit inflated there. It wasn't $500 billion or 500, whatever he said. But Obama did ship a few $1 billion of money that had belonged to the Shah and to the people of Iran on pallet loads and military aircraft, taking it to Iran to enable them. But that pales in comparison to what Biden did. Biden destroyed the energy market. He pushed up the price of petroleum by making uncertainty in the energy markets with his green energy nonsense and his failed foreign policy. And the Iranians got $250 billion of windfall profits from the extra cost of oil over the 3 or 4 years. And that money is what they use to fund the Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah. So I guess, Doc, the question is...
Wait, let me just mention something.
Yeah, good.
Really, I believe that Obama was the puppeteer of Biden. So he was still president, really, when Biden was president. So all these bad things, all these things that you just mentioned that helped Iran was really still Obama.
Well, I agree with 100% there. And the proof in the pudding on that is the fact that Susan Rice was part of Biden's cabinet. And she obviously was running that White House when she was there. I think we can't have much dispute on that. Once she left, that's really when this whole thing came unmoored, and they couldn't cover up what was going on with Biden anymore. Well, they tried admirably, but it's really frightening. This seemingly educated people who've gone to university, who ought to know better and ought to have common sense as well as a university degree, who simply lose their minds. I remember that protest, and Doc, this goes to the heart of the matter. I know someone who writes for the Congressional Research Service. We had a professional relationship because I was an Army officer, and I was a source for many of the congressional reports that she wrote when I was in Africa, talking about security sector reform in Liberia and many other projects. And so she's an author who is an analyst that writes for Congress, very erudite, very intelligent, very educated. And I happened to be up in Scranton, Pennsylvania for hockey the weekend that Trump was inaugurated. And that day, as I recall, I was flipping it because I was staying in my hotel during the day, nothing to do in Wilkes-Barre. Trust me, nothing to do up there. So I'm flipping through the television, watching all these protests, and Madonna out there talking about blowing things up, and these people wearing these idiotic hats with taking their little girls walk around the streets. I mean, they have no sense of decorum here. And I'm flipping through it, and I don't ever do Facebook, but I happened to go on Facebook that day for whatever reason, got involved in some chat with people, and she was one of the people that showed up in there. And I said, what is going on here? This is crazy. She came on and she said that it was a very different experience for her. She left her house. She lives somewhere in town, and she went out with her daughter. They walked down the street. She didn't see any of that. And I said, well, and this is what I said to her. I said, well, thank you for sharing that. That's a very different, and she posted some photos. It's very different than what we're seeing on television. Maybe the media wants us to see all this bad stuff that's going on here. But I mean, and so we agreed, and it's rational. People can agree. And then I made the mistake of not realizing I was dealing with someone with Trump derangement syndrome. And I said that, why weren't these people protesting in June when Congress was in session? They're complaining about women's rights and equal pay and this, that, and the other. I said, Congress passes legislation. The time to do this would have been last summer when Congress was still in session, or to do this when they come back in session. Why are you doing what Trump is here? Trump has nothing to do with this right now. This is just because you hate Trump. Not her. I didn't say. I said, these people just hate Trump. They should just be honest about it. I've never talked to her again. She left the conversation. At work, in my official government email, I needed a question answered about something. I wrote to her. She ignored it. I called her office. She hung up on me. I mean, what is wrong with people like this? First off, that person shouldn't be working for the U.S. government. If you can't be an adult to have a conversation like that, I mean, I didn't call her names. I didn't point anything at her. But I mean, this is what happens. And you talk about, telling them to, poison their husband or partner or something like that. Some of these people are crazy enough to do that, Doc.
Yes, absolutely. You just have to look at some of the social media sites. There's one site where they're telling people to not pay your bills. That would be one way to protest against the government. I mean, I divided this into and the point of this, I actually was talking about TDS during his first term, but it was kind of more lighthearted, we didn't realize, I didn't realize, nobody realized, I think, at that point, just how serious it could get. But now I'm trying to, I've put a whole diagnostic description together in the form of DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual Disorders. And I am going to be submitting it to the American Psychiatric Association for inclusion in their next DSM. Now, I know that that's pushing a big rock up a hill, but I've given reasons why why this should be, and I described mild cases and moderate cases and severe cases, and of course in severe cases, we've been having people trying to encourage other people to assassinate Trump. Of course, we have the 2 assassination attempts that really happened already, and then Iran supposedly has been trying to pay. We don't hear much about it, but they've been paying people to assassinate him, and then we have Comey and the seashells that he happened to find on the beach. What a coincidence! And so. And I'm proposing treatment because, the DSM is used for a couple of different reasons. One is to so that mental health professionals will have a common language, so that we could talk about different diagnoses and we all know what we mean by that. But another use is by insurance companies when they decide, according to the code that the diagnosis is, they decide how much they're going to pay or if they're going to pay to treat somebody with that diagnosis. So theoretically, if they did include this in the DSM, then people with Trump derangement syndrome could get treated. And I recommend individual treatment and individual psychotherapy and couples and family therapy. And for those people who have either moderate or severe TDS and symptoms that are associated with this that are psychotic, then medication would be useful, or also if severe depression or severe anxiety. So, and then I conclude with the impact that TDS is having on individuals and society. And of course, one of the major ones is the risk that Trump is under every day for assassination. I mean, it is amazing how many people would risk their life on a daily basis to help America. Not many with the seriousness of these threats. I don't know that many people would do that.
Well, those of us in uniform do it every day, but not quite to the level that Trump's dealing with. So but I get what your point.
That is true. That's a good point. I mean, in terms of being president.
So, Doc, a lighter-hearted moment there. My thoughts and prayers go out to you. I've lived in California. When I was a kid, it was amazing. The Bear Republic was one of the most amazing places on the planet. When I lived there 25 years ago, it was already on a downward glide path. Many parts of the state. I lived in Monterey, so it was spared some of that misery, not like East LA or other parts of Southern California, up there in Northern California. But, this whole situation, are you familiar with the situation with the Santa Clara University student being forced to become a therapist to attend bondage classes at a Jesuit university and give a sexual autobiography, and they're denying her her certification and graduation because she won't participate in this immoral approach. I mean, I can't believe this at a Jesuit. Well, I can believe it. Georgetown is another university that does some crazy things. But are you familiar with this Santa Clara story? You're out there in California.
Not really.
Oh, you should check into this one. It's fascinating. It's a graduate student in marriage and family therapy at Santa Clara University. And she walked out of a class because there was a video of a female influencer engaging in sexual bondage in the class. And when the lights came up, the professor smiled and asked if anyone wanted to try it for themselves. And then they were told they had to submit their own sexual autobiography and talk about their awkward sexual positions and things like this. This is a university. I mean, and the argument was, well, you have to be able to express these things in order to treat people. I mean, look, I don't have to be schizophrenic to treat a schizophrenic, do I? I mean, this makes no sense whatsoever.
Third, also, you're specifically not supposed to talk about your own life, your own psychological issues, no less sexual issues. That contaminates the sexual
Well, it pollutes the conversation, doesn't it?
Yes, the therapeutic relationship, asexual therapeutic relationship.
It's crazy. I mean, it's just insane. So I've sent you the link to that Wall Street Journal op-ed. She's since then lost her internship job, apparently, at the university. This just came out this past week. She's been harassed on campus. She's standing up. And maybe we'll hear from you a little bit later on about this since you weren't unfamiliar with the story. But that's out there in California. It's definitely, things have really, in many parts of California, gone sideways. I mean, we're seeing in Los Angeles, the behavior of the mayor who denies that there's an insurrection going on and then fosters and foments an insurrection. And then when the state governor takes no action and the city's in chaos and federal agents are attacked, then the president activates the California National Guard and they take him to court over what's allowed under Title 10 U.S. Code and the 1794 Act, as well as 1874 Insurrection Act. Solid ground. Even the Ninth Circuit Court looks like they're going to agree with Trump's authority here. But it's just crazy out there. I mean, this is cognitive dissonance in my mind. They simply ignore the law because it doesn't suit their needs. That seems to be, I don't know if psychosis is the right phrase, but it seems to be the modus operandi for people on the political left, especially if they don't get their way. Let's go to court. That's what they do. Am I missing something here? Am I being overly insensitive to the left?
No, no, I don't think so. Another example of a school that is doing crazy, left woke kinds of things, dangerous kinds of things, is UCLA. Even though the attention was mostly on Harvard and Yale and Columbia and all that, UCLA also had an incredible number of protesters, and they were really physically violent towards Jewish students. And but they also had, and after I got my MD, I went to UCLA for a master's in public health, and also I was an assistant clinical professor there for several years, and so I have some allegiance to UCLA, but I was appalled to see what was happening there. And they had for their medical students or an orientation that was given by some lunatic woman, and it was all very woke, very anti-Semitic. I mean, it was shocking to believe that this could be happening. It was a class, an orientation, like a day or days, where she was teaching them all these things, all these very, very dangerous kinds of things. And in fact, to the point where I think it's kind of dangerous in Los Angeles for Jewish people to go to UCLA, patients, because of all this indoctrination that they're giving their medical students.
Well, frankly, Doc, I think it's dangerous to be on any Ivy League campus if you're Jewish in this country today. These people are sick and twisted. Let's tie the Trump derangement syndrome and Judaism and anti-Semitism all together in a bow here, and let me get your thoughts on that. So I remember when this horrible attack occurred at a Pittsburgh synagogue in 2018. I live in Pennsylvania. 11 people were murdered in that event. And they couldn't wait, the media and the political left, to blame it on Trump and the atmosphere this created in this country of anti-Semitism. I don't recall Trump ever creating an atmosphere of anti-Semitism. Let me see a few things. His daughter is a converted Jew. His grandchildren are Jewish. His son-in-law is Jewish. He is the first person to actually follow U.S. federal law, which dictated 5 decades ago that our embassy be moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He also, through his son-in-law, negotiated the historic Abraham Accords, the most comprehensive peace settlement in the history of the Middle East, which was completely destroyed by Biden's stupidity and arrogance. So we have peace with Morocco, renewed relations between Morocco, and that included defense ties with Morocco and Israel. We had peace with Sudan, unbelievable, peace with the Emirates and Dubai, and the list goes on and on because of this. So I don't get any of this nonsense about, just like he's a racist, about him being anti-Semite. It makes no sense whatsoever. Yet they try to tar and feather him. And now when we have Jews being assaulted on campuses, a Jew and a Christian murdered because they work for the Israeli embassy in D.C. coming out of a Jewish Center event, we have this rabid anti-Semitism attack on Jews all over the country. And no one's talking about the people that are doing it, the leftists. They're the ones tolerating it. By the way, I'm putting my name in to be the president of Harvard University because Claudine Gay has fewer published academic articles than I do. Therefore, I'm eminently qualified. I think I should have the job. Unfortunately, I'm not black or a lesbian, so I'm probably not going to get it.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if presumably he still is president, but it was after her, there was a Jewish president. Well, after there was another woman, I think, and then there was a Jewish president, a man, of Harvard. And it's really surprising that he too is still, dragging his feet to do anything to address anti-Semitism on campus, even a Jewish president. It's sad.
Well, Dr. Lieberman, so let me ask you this question, because I sort of know where the answer comes from, but not everybody in the audience knows where it comes from. I'd like to get your take on it. Of course, I'm a Christian, and I've seen throughout my life deep ties between Christians and Jews who share similar heritage, and our faiths come out of the same region. Yet I've seen this antipathy towards Jews by so many people, and it frustrates me no end. Of course, if you know the history of humanity, you know the pogroms that took place in Belarus, in Poland, in Russia, then in the Soviet Union, and then of course the Holocaust. This is something that has gone on century after century after century. This hatred of Jews and this attack on Jews. Oftentimes, I think it's attributable to envy because Jews in many communities tend to be high performers in so many fields because of their focus on family, faith, and accomplishment. And so, of course, in banking and business, very successful. But they're not the only class of people like that. You see the Lebanese are similar sort of people who succeed in business and in banking. But I think envy has to be part of it. Maybe it's because Jews are viewed differently. They're easy targets in some places. But Jews run the gamut of appearance. They're blonde hair, blue eyed, and they look like folks from Pakistan sometimes because some of them come from Iran and places like that. So it's very odd to me, this hatred of Jews. I've never really understood it. I, as a Christian, I have no hatred of Jews. I don't understand that. To me, it must be the other, the outside, and envy. Is it some of that and much more? I don't know. Do you have the answer to that? I think that it's a very complex question to ask, but there's some obvious answers, I think.
Well, I think envy is definitely a part of it because there is such a strong emphasis in Jewish families to succeed, not necessarily, and for education and to succeed, and not necessarily, to succeed only in wealth, but to succeed like doing things for society. Lots of Jewish social workers, for example, and so yes, there are a lot of successful Jewish people, and I think that there is envy of that. I also think that it doesn't help that Jews believe that we are the chosen people, God's chosen people. I think that probably other religions, don't necessarily like that classification or description.
My feelings aren't hurt. The Jews can say that about themselves. I don't have a problem with that.
I certainly hope it's still true, with what's happening with Iran.
Yeah, he definitely needs something here, either in this life or the afterlife, to make up for all the stuff that's happened. All right, so I've been very patient, Dr. Carol Lieberman, very patient this hour. I've been waiting for this. You've written some books, one of which I'm a little curious about now. You've got this book, Bad Girls, Why Men Love Them and How Good Girls Can Learn Their Secrets. Now, why would I want good girls to learn the secrets? I want to know all about these bad girls. Tell us about these bad girls, Doc.
Okay, well, first of all, my first book was Bad Boys, Why We Love Them, How to Live with Them, and When to Leave Them. And I talk about 12 different types of bad boys and what makes them that way, which is their relationship with their mother when they're growing up. And what makes women be attracted to bad boys is their dysfunctional relationship with their father growing up, which makes them feel unlovable. So they feel like they don't deserve anything better than a bad boy, a boy that's going to, and by bad, I mean heartbreakers. There's the 12 run the gamut, that at the end, the legal lovers are men in jail who women love, who write letters to and so on. So then bad girls, also 12 different types of bad girls. Now, what makes a bad girl is they start off, for the most part, as a woman who is attracted to a bad boy. And then they get their heart broken, either by one bad boy, really strongly, or by several bad boys. And so the woman either gives up, she may say she wants to get married and all that, but she lets herself, fall apart. She doesn't look as good. And she stays home. She doesn't really try to meet guys. So there's that. Or the other side is they become bad girls, meaning that they go after men for, since they don't believe that they are lovable, they go after men for other reasons. So like, for example, the typical bad girl would be a gold digger. So she doesn't believe that a man is going to love her for her. She's going to, go off into the sunset. And so she just decides to manipulate a man to marry her, who is rich. And whatever money he gives her and goodies he gives her, she takes that for love, as a substitute. There are the a kind of woman, a ball buster, a woman who's very powerful. She wants to be in control, so she finds a man who she can control. And just like with the man bad boy, the male version of that is the Mr. Power Mad, who's very controlling. So it really is people, and when the women have given up because of their relationship with their father, given up on feeling lovable, being loved by a man, they're angry about that, and they resort to these other things as substitutes for love, and they're very manipulative. And so they can be manipulative because they've stopped wearing their heart on their sleeve, like they did when they were, started out. And also they feel comfortable in situations where they're not treated right. So it's not necessarily the same. They're not looking for someone exactly the same as their father always. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's the exact opposite of their father. Sometimes it's something in between. There's some reason. But then there are the women who are alcoholics or drug addicts, and they find a man who's going to enable them. So it's these different combinations, and but they're dysfunctional relationships, and that's because she's used to having a dysfunctional relationship with her father.
Well, I don't want to say it's fascinating. I mean, it's frightening. God created all these creatures and we have the ability to reason and think. And look what we do with our ability to reason and think. We divide ourselves into little groups and we isolate and we mistreat others. But it seems to me that so many of the problems we have in society stem from the lack of a loving two-parent family that's based in morality and raising their children in a loving environment, whether it's incest or, abuse or alcoholism or drugs or a host of other things, gambling addiction, all these addictions. People are always looking for something to fill a gap in their life. And to me, it seems like maybe, I mean, this sounds very simplistic, Doc, but maybe we can solve a lot of society's ills by having moral families, two-parent families that raise their children in a loving environment. And a lot of these problems would solve themselves. Is that too idealistic? Do I sound too leftist with that?
Absolutely true. In fact, the most common kind of bad girl these days, well, yes, or most common type of bad boy, really, is the frazzled frog. That's at the mildest extreme, as opposed to the lethal lover, in prison on the other end. But the frazzled frog is a man who never really got enough nurturing from his mother, and so his life is kind of a mess. Not in any serious way, but like he just never has. He's still like a tadpole. He's never really grown up. He doesn't have his career in order. His house is kind of messy. Things like that. So he's looking for a woman who is going to mother him and help him get his life together. Now, the women who are attracted to that kind of bad boy is a woman who didn't have a father when she was growing up. Her father was absent, either physically absent or emotionally absent. Now, this is the growing biggest type that has grown over the last years because of so many divorces. So when the father leaves, and sometimes hasn't married somebody else, sometimes has more children with another woman, the girl, the original daughter, feels abandoned, and so she's looking for a man who will, who is the neediest for her, who she thinks will never abandon her, and so that's the frazzled frog. But then what happens is that she helps him, she gets his life together and all that. And then when he gets his life together, he hops away. He breaks her heart.
Because he's still a frog. He's hopping away.
Well, because now he can find a woman who is better, so to speak. Better.
Gotcha.
Because now he has his life together. So he's still a heartbreaker.
Yeah, that's a shame.
And the women who when bad girls, why men love them and how good girls can learn their secrets, it's not like I'm trying to teach good girls to be bad girls necessarily to break men's hearts, but I talk about things that men like, that would make them more attractive to men, not just physically attractive, but like
more appealing.
Yes.
So I mean, we're going to run out of time here in a few moments there, Doctor, but even despite that, there are people who come from broken homes without two parents, or with parents who have addiction issues, or who are neglected, malnourished children, who see all the bad examples set in front of them, yet somehow they wind up in foster homes, state care, things like that. Yet somehow they become high performers and achieve so much in life despite the difficulty of their childhood circumstance, including molestation, things like that. How does that happen? Do certain people just have the ability to lock that stuff away far enough to pursue life and go through it? Or, I mean, because I see people like this, I know people like this who've done so well despite a horrible childhood. It's just amazing to me that people can overcome that and be successful.
Yes. In part, it's sometimes when these children find a substitute adult, like if the father is missing, but then they find a gym teacher or a regular teacher who kind of gives them extra attention to make up for that. Sometimes it's just the character, the personality that they were born with, that, and in fact, for some people, when they have problems in childhood, it makes them stronger. It gives them a challenge to get over that. And then when they do get over it, it makes them even stronger. Yes, that is an age-old question. How do some people, manage to go the opposite way? You try to rely on yourself, or you try to find other people, or sometimes if you're hurt enough, it can motivate you to put extra effort in to get where you want to go.
It really comes down to, I guess, a question of resilience and the ability of some people just to overcome adversity. I mean, I read the horrific stories of what happened at the end of the Second World War to the ethnic Germans who were expelled from the East, and women being raped by hundreds of soldiers, their family being murdered in front of them, yet surviving that, surviving, getting to America after the war, and building a new life, a new family with kids. It's unbelievable. The resilience of the human spirit sometimes is really inspiring in the face of all odds.
So we're getting ready to run out of show here. Real quick, Carol, do you have a contact information you'd like to give, web address or something?
My favorite website, I have several websites, but my favorite is terroristtherapist.com.
Awesome. Terroristtherapist.com. All right. Thank you, Carol, for being on with us. It's been an awesome conversation. We've really enjoyed it. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand by. We'll take a quick break and be back after the top of the hour.
WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Listen, watch, and stream at wsmn.live.
ABC News, I'm Dave Packer. Sources tell ABC News that President Trump has approved of Iran attack plans, but has not made a final decision on the matter. The president met with his national security team in the Situation Room for a second day in a row. U.S. diplomatic staff evacuated in Israel. Retired General Robert Abrams, an ABC News contributor, says that does signal broader American involvement.
I'm glad they're getting them out. It's the right thing to do because we don't, this is all very unpredictable.
The Federal Reserve kept its key rate unchanged for the fourth straight meeting today and said the economy is expanding, but the Fed expecting President Trump's tariffs to push up prices by the end of this year. A Massachusetts jury has found Karen Reed not guilty of killing her Boston police officer boyfriend in 2022. The Supreme Court ruling 6-3 along ideological lines, upholding a Tennessee law banning certain gender-affirming care treatments for minors. This is ABC News. Eric is now a hurricane, strengthening to a Category 2 as it churns towards Mexico's southern coast. Forecasters say Eric will bring heavy rain, strong winds, and fierce storm surges to the Mexican states of Oaxaca and Guerrero. Texas had been planning to build its own border wall, but now lawmakers have halted funding.
Governor Greg Abbott's announcement alongside the Rio Grande in 2021 came early during the Biden administration, with Abbott blaming Biden for rising numbers of illegal crossings.
Texas is taking what truly is unprecedented action to build a wall on our border.
4 years later, scattered segments covering about 8% of the state's border with Mexico are standing. Abbott's office says President Trump's immigration crackdown has made a physical wall unnecessary. Jim Ryan, ABC News, Dallas.
It took 2 years and a lot of perseverance, but wildlife experts in Michigan were finally able to trap a black bear and get their paws on the large lid that was trapped around his neck. They say the bear was in much better condition than they expected. Dave Hacker, ABC News.
Are you over 50 and constantly feeling tired, bloated, or just a little off? Don't ignore it. Those could be signs that your liver is crying for help. As we age, our liver, which is essential for metabolism, digestion, immunity, and detoxification, needs extra support and protection. If neglected, it can leave you feeling sluggish and constantly off your game. That's where Active Liver from New Nordic comes in. Available in easy-to-take tablets or delicious gummies, Active Liver combines powerful natural ingredients like turmeric, milk thistle, and globe artichoke extract to help support healthy liver function. With Active Liver, you're giving your body an essential daily defense against toxins from alcohol, fatty foods, and sweets, helping you reclaim your energy, improve digestion, lose the bloat, and strengthen your immunity so you can look and feel your best again. Protect your liver and give it the support that it deserves by making Active Liver from New Nordic part of your daily wellness routine. Find Active Liver in stores at your local CVS, Meijer Grocery, or online at Amazon or NewNordicUSA.com.
Continuing legacy started in 1904, Roger Pellerin of Gate City Monument Incorporated continues to provide the same high-quality monument, custom headstone, and stoneworking craftsmanship today that they built their reputation on over 100 years ago, servicing Nashua, New Hampshire, as well as nearby areas in Massachusetts, such as Lowell, Billerica, Chelmsford, and beyond. From creating custom monuments to memorialize, to landscaping and granite work or restorative services, each job is done to your satisfaction and is backed by decades of experience and integrity. If you're thinking about stonework, think Roger Pellerin of Gate City Monument. Visit online at gatecitymonument.com. Stop by and meet Roger at 321 West Hollis Street in Nashua, or call 603-883-7141. That's 603-883-7141. Gate City Monument, memorials of distinction for people who care.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just now tuning in, you're listening to the Common Sense Concerns right here, WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 on your FM dial. Guys, Todd, I'm glad to see you could join us for the second hour. We just concluded a great conversation with Dr. Carol Lieberman. That was a lot of fun. Regarding the protest, did you guys catch Donald Trump's response?
I did not catch his response to it. I've heard a lot of different stuff from a lot of talking heads, but I was pretty busy over the weekend. But I'm sure it was comical and probably on point.
Oh, it was great. It was here to listen to this. A huge thank you to all the No Kings protesters yesterday. I was very concerned a king was trying to take my place, but thanks to your tireless efforts, I am still your president. Great job, all.
Right.
That was great. That's a classic Trump response. You can't dislike that for a moment.
Yeah, I mean, we did. I mean, I guess it was effective. We woke up and we still didn't have a king, so that's a good thing. I'm glad they were out there.
Kings, give me a break. Oh, these people really take the cake.
Oh, they do. They do. So, what have we got going on here in the news lately? Todd, you got any news? You were away for the first hour. You became, let me get this right, commander of the VFW. Was that correct?
No, American Legion, Department of Tennessee, got elected on Sunday unanimously and took over. And now I've got a whole state to run. I've got a new car, a Commander Mobile that goes along with the job. It's a few years old, but hey, it gets the job done.
There you go. All right, American Legion. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. I knew it was something that
I'm a life member of both organizations, but just I happen to be active in the American Legion. It just seems to be a little bit more American Legion posts in the area than there are VFWs.
So you'll be a very, very busy man.
Right. And of course, that's where I was at the first hour. We had a National American Legion College Alumni Association board meeting I had to attend to. We got our national convention coming up in August, and we were planning the big event there and the next elections for next year. So that's what we were talking about there.
Awesome. So you're going to be very busy with the way you're on the Board of Education. Now you're commander with the American Legion.
Trying to be busy, trying to help out. So trying to lend my talents where they, can be better served versus just sitting on my hands complaining. Try to do something to help out. That's what I'm all about. And of course, published a book, selling it. I was on Newsmax on Saturday to promote that, and that really helped out book sales. I'm trying to just sell 1,000. Everything's going to be donated to help end veteran suicide. The American Legion Be the One program. That's what I'm going to donate every penny to.
Awesome. Yeah, that was my follow-up. I was going to ask you how that's coming along. So
that's the news.
Plugging it away, man. Awesome.
Trying to make something happen positive in the world.
That's the ticket, man. Put your money where your mouth is. See, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're talking about here at the Common Sense Conservatives. Put your money where your mouth is. Get involved where and when you can.
There you go. Bingo.
So what we got going on, gentlemen? We've had, we got Iran is now facing their just dues here. Getting attacked by Israel. How's that? I'm not up on that. Any of you guys caught up on that? What's going on with it?
Well, we're on the verge of conflict here. President Trump ended his trip to the G7 in Canada, came back early, and convened the National Security Council late in the evening to get back here. And then he published some tweets on his Truth Social, and including one saying, "That's it, unconditional surrender for Iran." So we're in a situation now where the peacemaker Donald Trump, who hates war and has ended one conflict after another, is on the verge of potentially taking us into conflict, with Iran. And this is something that's long overdue, not a conflict, but a reckoning for Iran. And frankly, I don't see any way out of this other than regime change at this point. I'm pretty confident that the Israelis are going to ensure that there's regime change, whether they take Khamenei out or they simply, just destroy everyone around him. Right now, they're very successful taking everyone out around him, aren't they, Todd? I mean, people are disappearing left and right every day. It's another general.
Absolutely. I heard today some national security correspondent or commentator, whatever the case may be, they're talking about some of their bunkers or whatever. They're like, and they're giving them some compliment. They're like, yeah, a couple of their bunkers are pretty deep and they're in there pretty good. It's like, it's probably gonna take 4 of our bunker busters to get them versus the one, it's like, take 4 of them. They take a little bit more money, but they're going to get you. Don't worry.
Yeah, look, I mean, Trump comes out and says we have not just air superiority, but air dominance. Air dominance, achieving that is quite a significant development. And that's exactly what's been achieved. Air dominance, total control over the airspaces of Iran. Iran is, desperately launching missiles, but most are being intercepted either by the Israelis or the Americans.
I think Netanyahu pretty much, without saying so, he's been planning this for a long time. Do you think Trump was in on the planning before he became president? Kind of like, give him the nod, like, yeah, you go ahead and do this and we'll have your back. Or do you think Netanyahu was just like, I don't care if you're here or not, we're doing this?
I'm pretty confident that what's going on here is that the U.S. government was aware of the attack. I don't know if we were given the date it was going to launch, but I think, to be honest, I think that they were a little bit caught off guard, but we knew that this was in the works, and just the Israelis launched it and did it at the right time. They caught the Iranians. The Iranians thought they could play this game like the South Africans can do and play kissy face up front and pretend that they're negotiating, working with people while sabotaging, undermining everything from the backside. And the Israelis just caught them completely flat-footed. I mean, what an incredible, guys, I remember 1981 when Israel attacked Iraq's nuclear facility and destroyed their ability to develop a nuclear weapon and bought us another 20 years. This was necessary. This is pretty darn scary how close Iran was. I was talking to who was I talking to someone earlier? I don't know, it was last night on John B. Wells and discussion about, no, it was earlier. I was talking to someone. They said, well, it's Ted Cruz is saying, a few years ago that they were imminent, just about to get the bomb. And then he said again, look, I mean, people shouldn't be burying their head in the sand. Iran has this obsessive fixation on getting a nuclear weapon so they can use it. They're not going to just hang on to it. They're going to give a suitcase bomb to the Houthis or give it to Hezbollah or Hamas. These are evil people, and they've been enabled by the Democrats.
I remember when they got nuclear power, it was just for energy, and that was the concern. If they have it just for energy, they can weaponize it. And according to Netanyahu, I believe he was saying there were 60-something% right there. And he's basically declared we were in the 12th hour when we attacked. Meaning Israel, but he was saying they were in the 12th hour, that this was now, the time was now, this has to be done. And he did say that. He said, we are doing a service for the world. This is self-serving. The Israel's protecting itself, but in the long run, this is a service for the world.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, Israel would be the first target wiped off the map, and then the rest of the free world would be right after.
Well, in fact, I went live when the attacks began and it was occurring, and I said very clearly that Israel has done the world a favor. It's the world, not Israel, not the United States. It's the world. I mean, can you imagine? Look, people try to play this game. Well, it's hypocritical. America has the bomb, yeah, and we're not using it. We're not threatening people with it. These people threaten us with death every single day.
Right.
Death to America. I mean, are we just supposed to ignore that? When do we take them seriously?
Speaking of the 2 times that the U.S. used it, it saved millions of lives, and it shortened a war that would have probably decimated millions more civilians. So we used it properly, and Truman gave them a warning. And at the same time, the bomb that we used, far less than what we have now.
That's where I was going to go next. That's like firing a 155 artillery round compared to what the capability of these bombs are today.
Completely, yes.
It's not even the same conversation.
However, if we wanted to, we can make. If we needed to use nuclear, we can make it small enough where it's less detrimental, if I'm not mistaken. It's not like we have to make them huge. We can make smaller impact.
Well, the nukes that we have that are either on ships or in silos or that can be carried on our bombers, they're of a certain size as already, to make something smaller, you'd have to go through and manufacture the whole thing.
Well, I mean, how big are they talking about now that we have ready available? I mean, we blowing half the world away if we have to use one, or are we just talking about a small region?
No, you're talking about wiping an entire city off the place of the planet forever at this point. Yeah, if we did something, and that's just a small strike, if you will. That'd be a small strike. A city's pretty much gone.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's not like it's so devastating it's going to destroy the whole world if
Not going to
we would
destroy the
ever
world. I
have to
mean,
utilize
yeah.
one. But
No.
God forbid, and of course we always, as Americans, we always hope we never ever have to use one.
Right.
It's just a precautionary measure to have them on hand.
Well, yeah. Well, the idea was the whole MAD, right? Mutual assured destruction is kind of like, you hold your trigger, we'll hold ours, and then we'll keep this conflict, as I guess in check as we possibly can, if you will. Keep them more conventional versus going nuclear.
So, Israel had a strike that they took out about 50% of Iran's artillery, their missiles, and but they have about 100 missiles left, I guess, and so Israel was concerned, they're going to use those strategically now. They're going to be very cautious how they use them. We know with the Iron Dome, and we, the United States, have taken a lot of their missiles out of the air to begin with. Is there any chance, do you think, that China, I know China's already getting involved as far as giving them or supplying them with manufacturing substances to make new missiles, make new weapons, but is there a chance that China or Russia or anybody on that axis may be getting involved in this effort?
Well, there was a flight from a cargo company that's based out of Luxembourg that's partially owned by a Chinese company that was en route to Luxembourg, and it diverted towards Iran coming from China and landed in Turkmenistan. They turned off their transponder when they got close to Iranian airspace. The company, Cargolux, I think is the name of it, claims that they didn't go over Iranian airspace and they weren't up to anything unusual. But you don't shut your transponder off in an active war zone as a commercial civil aircraft and put yourself at risk unless you've got evil intent. So it raises a lot of questions about what the Chinese are up to, whether the government's doing it or they've got rogue corporate actors. But we don't know what happened there, but there's denial. So there's a lot of supposition that the Chinese are supporting the Iranians, and I wouldn't be shocked to see that they're doing something. But the question is, I mean, what did they possibly have in that aircraft? Some materials, some propellant, a couple missiles, I don't know. But yeah, Iran is definitely going to run out of missiles at some point here soon, and they're just going to get pummeled every single day by the Israeli Air Force, and that which can now doesn't have to fire missiles from Israel, doesn't have to stand off over Iraq and fire missiles over airspace. They've got total air dominance. There's nothing coming up at them. There's virtually no air defense that can take them down. So the only threat to them is running out of fuel, or for the most part, or an engine failure. And God forbid that happens. You land in Iran. You don't want that. But yeah, no. So it's not going to be pretty for the Iranians going forward. And they brought this on themselves. The good news is that we've got rational actors like Donald Trump are like, hey, get out of Tehran now. Did you see the traffic jams? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
For miles, man. Jeez, people getting smart. Of course, the looters who stayed behind are probably loving things.
Yeah, imagine. Did it kind of remind you of the first Iraq War, the Highway to Hell, whatever they were?
Highway of Death. Highway of Death. Yeah.
Highway of Death. Sorry.
Well, the difference there is that those are murderers, rapists, and thieves, and these are just mostly innocent civilians trying to get the heck out of Dodge. But yeah, I get your point.
Oh no, I get what you're saying. I'm just saying the stream of cars and stuff. Yeah.
To my understanding, Iran had turned off a lot of their communications for internet and things like that to prevent Iranians from hearing about what's going on and seeing people
also,
trying to flee, because they didn't want people to be encouraged to flee. They'd rather they stay.
Well, they also don't want people to be able to stream anything like a regime change. They don't want people to be able to stream and coordinate anything like that as well. That's a big part of that. That's self-preservation on their part of the regime.
So we might propagate things on their internet to their people, and they wouldn't like that.
Well, that, but also that they couldn't coordinate themselves if it became more organic, where they want to just uprise and kill the guy or take over their own country, which they should. I mean, honestly, people in that country should uprise and have a say in their own lives, for crying out loud, not some Ayatollah or some other regime that's elected, if you will. It's not, they're not elected for
forced election.
Faux elections.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you see this as short term? Then you think this is going to be over relatively quick, or you think this might start to drag out?
It's been going on for centuries. That's what I say. So, this is just an extension of what's been going on.
It's like the liberal left. It never stops. It might dim a little bit, but it'll always kick back up again. We were questioning last year, how long in the Trump administration will it be before we start seeing rioting in the streets again? Well, we've got our answer.
Right.
Well, it's hard to say what's going to happen here. It depends what Israel's ultimate goal is here. I think it's to destroy the nuclear program. And if they reach that stage, they may change the objectives. It now seems that we're already shifting the objectives in Washington and in Jerusalem to one of stopping their nuclear capability to regime change. It's not been stated by either side, but it seems pretty obvious. When Trump calls for unconditional surrender, And Tel Aviv, or not Tel Aviv, I'm so used to saying Tel Aviv, Jerusalem has pummeled Iran so badly that they're going to run out of targets here. So if they continue it, it's going to seems to me like it'll be about regime change. That's my thoughts. Guys, I don't know if you saw this, but remember the Macedonian server farms from Hillary Clinton's era? You know, that's why she lost the election, because of Macedonian server farms and Russian interference in the 2016 election. Remember that?
Oh,
and
yeah.
the $5,000 in Facebook ads, which is what about 2 days worth of ads that apparently influenced millions of people to vote for Donald Trump, according to Hillary Clinton, who is in election denial still, along with Stacey Abrams in Georgia. But we now find out, because the FBI had the data and they hid it, Kash Patel's FBI has uncovered the fact that the Chinese shipped hundreds of thousands of fake driver's license to America for Chinese students over here, apparently, and for those who are Chinese nationals living in America so they could vote in the 2020 election. They made over 19,000 seizures at one postal center in Chicago alone. Yeah, the election interference apparently was real, but it came from Joe Biden's buddies in Beijing so that he could win. Interesting. This was covered up during the Biden regime, obviously, and all this demonic effort to say bad things about Trump, and that there was nothing substantiated. Well, of course that's substantiated, because the FBI investigated and then covered up the evidence. Did you guys hear about this?
Yeah, I didn't quite catch this whole story, man, but it goes to show you, where there's smoke, there's fire. You know, people aren't stupid. We knew what we were seeing in 2020. We knew exactly what we were seeing, and we were calling out. We didn't know the details, but we were calling it out. And it's great to hear that somebody like Kash Patel has come forward with transparent. And that's the nice thing about this Trump administration. They're more transparent than any other presidential administration. And he's coming forth with the information and the data and saying, yeah, you guys are right. And here's the proof.
Yeah. No, I mean, so they've released it. I mean, the FBI covered this up. Fake driver's license. Unbelievable. Wow. Trump has long claimed that the election was rigged, and here's the FBI providing the evidence. In November of 2020, Biden won the closely contested race by taking Arizona and Georgia by 10 and 12,000 votes, and defeated Trump by 20,000 votes. And they've uncovered hundreds of thousands of fake driver's license for mail-in balloting. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. I'm not sure how it applies, but to deny that it happened, which is what they've been doing forever, is just nonsense. And now we're exposing their lies.
Right. Was saying voter fraud doesn't happen. It's like saying there's nobody speeding on the interstate right now.
Exactly.
Nobody speeds on the interstate at all. It's the same thing, right? Nobody would believe if I said that. So it happens. Come on.
So I got a question for both of you guys. Do you have any empathy for the meatpacking industry, the construction industry, and all of these other industries that have been relying on illegal aliens to conduct their business? Some of these places have 75% illegals. 75% illegals working for them. And they're moaning to the Trump administration, it's not fair. We're going to go out of business. Guys, I have no empathy. They should be charged with criminal act.
None. And I'll tell you why. They've had enough forewarning. This is what was going to come. They knew this was going to come. They were taking advantage of these people and using these people basically like slaves. They were underpaying them, mistreating them. I've heard stories about guys that left restaurants, Mexican people out here illegally, found walking, muttering to themselves, so angry because they were mistreated, treated so poorly where they worked. And this is what happens to illegal aliens. And this is what I've complained about time and time again. When they're out there working farms and stuff in South Florida, and Hurricane Andrew's blowing through, and they're here illegally, they're unaccounted for, which means they can be easily abandoned. And they have found illegal bodies and wrapped up into trees and stuff, when the tide receded and things like that, where they were abandoned out there. That's not right. That's inhumane. That's disgusting. That's third world stuff. But yet our leftists want to keep this going. They want to keep these people subject to abuses.
Well, I experienced this doing a graduate program 20 years ago with Troy University, and we all commented about illegal immigration in one of our projects in our groups, and people, these leftists, had the stupidity to actually say, well, we need illegal immigrants because Americans won't pick raspberries, and we need them so we can get raspberries. And are you serious? So you believe that it's legitimate to have the soft bigotry of your worldview so that you can get cheap raspberries, or you can get a gardener because they're driving down labor rates? I'd rather pay $5.75 for a pint of raspberries and eat them less often, if that's the true cost of the labor, by hiring Americans legally and paying them a living wage, than to pay $1.75 for a pint of raspberries and have my country invaded by people who knock out 27 babies and claim status and then draw benefits. I'd much rather pay more for raspberries.
But even so, we have work visas for people to migrate here just to work.
That's
Sure.
correct.
Visas and stuff.
H-2A visas. That's what they are.
So their claims are erroneous and fake.
Right, because if you want to talk about driving down prices of raspberries, strawberry, whatever the case may be, Americans are going to find a way to get those prices down for sure. Because I mean, we're ingenuous whenever it comes to the markets, whether it comes to creating a better product, whatever the case may be, we're going to find a way. And cheap labor was the answer because people were greedy, like the Colonel said. But the reality is, we're going to find a way to get those raspberries cheaper and pick them a heck of a lot easier. That's for sure.
Robotics.
We'll find a way.
And that's an upcoming thing, right? Autonomy and robotics. But it's funny. Are you guys enjoying this inflationary rate they promised us? Because those Chinese vessels were coming back empty, and now your cost of goods at the stores are going to go up. Have they gone up? And why is it that traffic is up by 15% from this time last year? Why is there more traffic on America's roads today? Is the economy actually growing and not shrinking? We're not seeing inflation?
The economy is doing fine despite all the lies. In fact, blue collar workers have experienced the largest gain in the first 5 months of the current administration of any administration since Nixon in the 1970s, with a 1.7% actual after inflation gain among wages in first 5 months, which doesn't sound like a lot, but every previous president has had a loss except for Jimmy Carter, where it was flat. But every president since Nixon has had a loss in real income for blue-collar workers until this term with Trump. So there you go. I'm sorry, Trump also had it in his last time too, but this is the biggest one. So yeah, no, the economy's doing fine. The tariffs that they're all freaking out over is not the issue they're making out to be. Not that it's not a problem; it's an issue, but it's something that will be sorted out. So anyway,
of course, water seeks its own level; it'll balance out, and things will work themselves. They always do.
100%.
Yes, sir.
100%.
So yeah.
But the China thing is, are we vindicated now? Are we vindicated? This nonsense.
Let's start looking at those machines again. Come on, Cash, bring it on. Let's get it all out there. Let's get the machines again, because there were some issues about that, as I recall. The Ninja cybersecurity reports and all this other stuff. Or was it Cyber Ninja reports? And all these other things that were going on that people just kind of glossed over, didn't want to pay any attention to.
So has it been a week? Or, I mean, this shooting took place since we met last week, didn't it? This Minnesota thing. Do you guys follow that? That's pretty crazy.
Oh, no. It happened just after our last show. I think it happened.
Right. Yeah. The husband and the wife were shot. Yeah. It's despicable.
She was a Democrat state House member, and her husband were both murdered because the way she voted against the left, she voted with the right, and also a U.S. senator and his wife.
Minnesota senator.
I'm
Minnesota
sorry,
senator, not
thank
U.S.
you for the correction. I said U.S. Minnesota senator and his wife were also critically injured by the same gentleman. So he's facing second-degree murder charges on 2 accounts and second-degree assault. And I think they said the reason why it isn't first degree is because for it to be first degree in Minnesota, you need a grand jury indictment.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's pretty crazy though. I mean, this whole thing, this guy, and what a crazy set of circumstances there. Hunting this guy down. They had a lot of people looking for that. And old Timmy Waltz out there, trying to look presidential.
Did I not see that this guy used to work on his staff at one time?
He was appointed by him twice to different positions. I don't know if he was on his staff, so to speak. So,
but he was connected. That's the whole meaning, is he was connected to Tim Walz.
But we have to be careful with that. You remember, of course, John Wayne Gacy, the serial killer. Was in a photograph. He was an alderman with Rosalind Carter.
Rosalind Carter, right?
1976. She didn't know who he was. He came up, took a picture. I mean, look, I was just in South Africa, and some grifter who was trying to get on my broadcast so he could, talk about his program. And I quickly realized this guy was scheming people. He was telling people that if you pay a certain amount to him, he'd get you on a list to get you the first refugees come to America. There's no cost to it. No one has any inside information. So I refused to bring him on. He came to one of my meet greets in which hundreds of people came to. And he came up like, dozens of people and asked for a selfie. I didn't recognize him. Take a picture. So he took my photograph, and then he tried to sell as if I was endorsing him to his suckers. And that's actually what it made all fall apart, because they realized, wait a second, Colonel Wyatt's been saying you don't pay anything. No, that isn't right. So then he made a video because he was angry at me because his scam didn't work using my photograph. And he's like, well, I went to Colonel Wyatt's meet and greets and I wasn't really impressed. There's not really much there.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, buddy. But no, my point is that I don't know that idiot from Adam. I got nothing to do with him. And whatever he's done, just because he appears in a photograph of me doesn't mean anything. Same thing, governors and presidents appoint hundreds of people, if not thousands.
Absolutely.
So I want to be careful about, blaming little Timmy Waltz for this clown, because they probably don't even know who each other is. So, but what I can say is that the rush to claim it was a right-wing conservative, that was immediate, which they always try to do, is just obnoxious, because it turns out that's not who the guy is. And then, it flipped the other way. Well, now he's a Waltz guy. I just stayed out of that because it doesn't mean anything. Now, if he was on Walt's staff at the governor's mansion, well, then maybe there's a little responsibility there, but just some guy appointed to some commission.
I was under the impression he was staff.
But... No, he was on some commission and got appointed. So, but definitely the guy's pretty bold. I mean, I don't know where he got the police cruiser from, and drives up with a rubber mask on his face and just murders people, shot the people that survived 8 and 9 times and they're still alive. Good Lord. Yeah. And then the ones who were killed, I have no idea how many times they were shot, but it's a pretty frightening thing. And this is the dangerous political environment that's been fostered by the political left in this country for the past 15 years. With their Bush derangement syndrome, their anti-Iraq, anti-war stuff, their hatred of America, their demonic obsession with letting people come to this country, and all the evil they do. Their summer of love in 2020, when they attack people openly and brazenly in the streets. This is what you get, shooting members of the Republican caucus in Congress at their practice session for playing baseball. It's just, this is who these people are. Some of them, but their behavior fosters this climate and this environment. And that's what we're seeing. And it's pretty scary, guys, but you never know. Earlier today, I had somebody ring my doorbell when I was in the middle of a broadcast, and then beat on my door. When you beat on the door, something must be urgent. So of course you run out to see what's going on. And it was just these lawn care specialists trying to sell me their crap.
I had something similar today or yesterday. I was about to jump in the shower, hear this ding, 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 ding. And it's like somebody tried to sell, fumigation or whatever. And I'm like, I'm good. He tried to come back on the property. I said, I'm good. I don't want anything, not buy anything. Thank you.
But you have you have to wonder about this too. I mean, this isn't a retirement community. It's a working neighborhood of, middle age and, and young adults. And why are you coming knocking people's doors at 2:00 in the afternoon? You got to come here about 5:30 to 7:30, 8 o'clock at night to catch the heads of household, the people that are going to make these decisions. Or is your goal to sucker in the spouse that's at home, who's got a few minutes to talk to? Maybe that's intentional. I hadn't thought about that. So.
Right. Yeah. You get the people that don't know, and it's like, oh, I do something with this. Oh, this looks really bad. I get on it right now. Let us get this. And then they start some job. Next thing you know, you're on the hook for a few $1,000. Your stuff's destroyed.
I have had my wife tell me, she says, if the car's got to go to the shop, you're taking it. Because you don't understand automobiles. I don't know anything, and they'll try to take advantage of her because of her lack of knowledge. And from my understanding, this does happen to women. So I get that point. They come to your house, knock on the door, and try to get the wife of the house that doesn't understand what the house may need as far as work goes or something, and rope her in. And she signs a commitment before he's even home.
Yeah, those things happen on a regular basis, especially back in the day before the digital age, where you had a lot of door-to-door salesmen and stuff like that. People would fall for things like that, Oh, I'm sure your husband knows about all this, Why haven't you gotten this yet? You need to get it, Yeah, right.
Yeah. This is going to save you a lot of work, ma'am, and in the end, it's going to pay for itself. It's a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, I don't know. It kind of reminds me of Lucy and the Vita Vita Vegemix. Guys, I love Lucy, the Vita Vita Vegemix. You ever see that?
I don't remember the exact episode, but
that was funny. I still remember that as a kid.
Oh, Vita she was manufacturing. She went in the bottles.
Yeah. The Vita Vita Vegemix.
Just occurred to me. She had to buy the jars and stuff.
And she couldn't keep up with the assembly line, and it all spilled all over the place. Anyway, it just reminds me of that. But yeah, no, it's anyway, it's Guys, so the thing I was asking, Todd wasn't here in the first hour, but I asked the doc about the Santa Clara University. Did you know about that story, John? Did you heard about that? Where
No,
that student out there was being forced to attend college classes in which they were showing bondage films, and it was a requirement. Otherwise, they couldn't pass the class. Without the class, they can't graduate and get their certification in that field. And then they they forced them to do a sexual autobiography and talk about the most embarrassing sexual moments and their most intimate things. I mean, it sounds like some perverts just trying to scam on undergrads or grad students.
He's
Pretty
probably
sick.
writing a book of his own. He's using them in their vulnerable position to gather information.
Pretty sick. Pretty sick.
It is. Yeah. It's disturbing that people would stoop to those levels. You never know what people are up to anymore, especially today. That's where people are off the rockers today.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. So what are your thoughts there? We had Dr. Lieberman on there that first hour, John. I mean, what did you take away from that? I saved the bad girls question till the end.
Yeah, I saw you got right on that, and I thought she was pretty good, forthcoming. I was interested. We ran out of time. I'd like to get to find out in her proposal for this, how she expects it to be administrated. I don't know, maybe too many people on the left is going to go, I think I'm suffering from derangement syndrome, so maybe I should go get a shrink, but will it be a case when they're burning electric vehicles or something in protest Elon Musk and the court ordered? I'm wondering if that's where that would go.
Well, I like how she treats it as an actual medical condition and not just a nickname that we give to people on the political left.
Well, she's defining it. That's what she's talking about with the DSM, is they will lay it out there. They'll define it and actually substantiate it there. And it'll work as a community of psychiatrists. And
right, with a common terminology. I think it's great because it can apply to a lot of things. Yeah, it'll just be called Trump derangement. It's like Asperger's is named after that guy, and all these diseases.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of diseases, not really disease, but mental deficiency going on here. Some good news here. The Supreme Court has upheld Tennessee's ban on gender transition care for minors. This broke this afternoon. The court's decision allows a law in Tennessee and has implications for 23 other states that have banned similar treatment. So Tennessee can ban gender transition treatments for minors. They called it divided Supreme Court, but it wasn't divided. It's a landmark decision, 6-3. That's not divided. That's 2/3.
No.
Yeah, that's not divided. This is typical leftist. This is the Washington Compost reporting this, but Tennessee now will ban this care for those under the age of majority. Todd, you live in Tennessee. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, it is past due time, absolutely, and it makes sense. Hopefully the other states will be able to follow suit and ban the same exact thing. Be able to apply it to their own state. I mean, nobody should be taking advantage of some minor, for crying out loud, whose brain's still developing. Where you filled their head for years full of nonsense, and all of a sudden then you're going to tell them, oh, by the way, you can have all this care, and it'll affirm everything that we've been telling you that you are. And next thing you know, by the time you realize it, shoot, you've cut off something that you really like and you really would love to have back. Yeah, and guess what? It's too late at that point.
The thing about it is I'm a big proponent on, I believe in parental rights. And we get, as conservatives, we get stuck here at a little bit of a slippery slope, right? Because you're saying that the parent here isn't capable of making a decision for their child. But at the same time, this comes into a circumstance where you're stepping into an area where it's for the welfare of the child, because they're not old enough to make the decision on their own. And some of these parents really don't have the faculties to make these decisions. How do you decide that a child is a boy or a girl when they're only 8 years old? They don't know that. You don't know that. Women that they're boy, women. Some children want to play dress up because they saw mom dressing up. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that they're transgender. It just means that,
no.
You know what? But back in the day, you go back to Roosevelt's day, Franklin, not Theodore, or even in Theodore's day, they used to dress up 5-year-old boys like girls. It was a common practice. It doesn't mean that they were going to grow up to be girls or want to be girls or act like girls. They didn't even have any thoughts like that.
Yeah,
I can't argue with that point.
It's not that necessarily they dressed them up like girls. It was just they had unisex outfits that were easy to put on, and it looked like a girl's dress. I think that's kind of more of what they were wearing.
I don't know. They looked kind of girlish to me, but it wasn't an uncommon practice back in the day. I think it had a lot to do with money wasn't utilized the way it is.
Yeah, it was.
We have a great deal of
outfit for young
flexibility
kids,
today. Yeah, back then it's like, well, we get dresses a lot easier than we do pants and slacks and stuff, and it's easier.
Right.
And
And
I
kids are
really think it
squirming.
wasn't, these were 5-year-old boys. They didn't have an identity this way. They didn't
No.
have an identity of I'm a girl or I'm a boy. They were just with mom.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the world's just gone absolutely crazy, and it's getting crazier by the minute. I mean, look where we're at right now, folks. We've got a war in Ukraine. We've got a war in Gaza. We've got a war in Yemen. We've got a war in Lebanon. We've got a war in Iran now. And the Democrats are complaining about kicking criminal alien invaders out of the country. That's their biggest worry.
Well, they like war.
Yeah, that's true. They seem to love war. They claim they don't love war, but boy, do they ever love it.
They're the ones that can't contain themselves are the ones burning down cities, setting dumpsters on fire and running them into buildings or crowds of people and carrying firearms while claiming they got to take firearms away from people and protect society, but they're running around with firearms threatening people in the streets.
Right. Well, whenever their person is murdering, people who don't vote a certain way, they're okay with it. They're kind of mum, and somehow Trump's to blame. Trump is the reason that, this person was murdered. I mean, you hear some of these politicians actually claiming that or alleging that in some one way or another. Trump's to blame, Republicans are to blame, Republican rhetoric. That's why this happened. No, this guy was a scumbag piece of crap. The person voted appropriately, and you couldn't let that stand, and you had to murder the people. It's pathetic. But Republicans aren't to blame for that.
No, but they'll try to blame him.
Yep.
They'll try to blame him. That's what they do. That's what they're experts at.
The old-fashioned spin, huh?
Yeah. So, Todd, you are now the commander of your Legion post. Is that what I understood earlier?
Oh, department. The whole state.
Are you serious?
Yeah, the whole state. Yeah.
Congratulations. I missed the whole state part. Wow.
Yeah, yes, sir. The whole state.
How did that go? Because, I just went to the state convention here in Pennsylvania for the VFW and went through that whole process of being elected. Thankfully, many of the posts, only one candidate stood, because what happens is they go through all the districts, 30, 40 districts, and,
you get tired.
They pass in review, man. I can only sing the Army song so many times,
Right.
because what they do is that whatever service you're in, they play that service songs, first to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the Army goes rolling along.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was unanimous when I had previously served as senior vice, so the number 2 in the state. Now we've got the ball rolling. We're moving in a different direction, because a lot of times we had a lot of the, not making fun of anything, we had a lot of the older guys that would, become state commander, department commander, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they just in there filling a slot for about a year or so. And it was really not a lot they were doing. And now we're moving in a direction where we need to start doing things to recruit new members, and at the same time get these programs in our communities, because think about it, people grew up many years ago with American Legion in their backyard that did so much for their communities, VFW, etc. We don't see that as much anymore. And civic organizations, same thing. They're having problems getting people. And hopefully this will be able to sway folks to join and maybe point our society in a better direction. I hope that's the case.
Well, it goes back to the point that I don't know if we've discussed it here. I think we've discussed it privately, but I know I've discussed with people all the time, is that society is broken in so many ways. America used to be a nation of volunteers. Volunteerism was such an important part of our society. People volunteer for everything. And that was what helped us do so many things, accomplish so much, whether it was volunteering for the Scouts or the Lions or the Kiwanis or the Legion, the VFW. That seems to have become frayed about the time that Obama became president. I'm not blaming Obama. That seems to be the time that it began fraying. And then it was just completely broken by COVID and hasn't recovered. Getting people to volunteer. I have to tell you that, for the Memorial Day parade, after the parade, we have a ceremony in which we honor, the fallen at our local cemetery. And as a commander, I had to introduce and do the ceremony, and we had a guest speaker. And I kind of pooched the ceremony in a couple of respects, which most people don't know because they don't know the sequence. But it was because I didn't have anybody. I had to grab what guys I had. And okay, now you're doing this, you're doing that. You put this flower up there, you do that. And I got all discombobulated. And it was literally at the last minute. I had to walk into the crowd of people that I know local who are not veterans, who are not soldiers, never touched the firearm, said, "Would you mind being part of our honor guard and fire the rifle?" And the guy looked at me like crazy. I'm like, no, I know you'll do it well. So took him over and got a quick class on how to chamber around, and that sort of thing. Look, I mean, getting people to do things is like, it's worth. Pulling teeth has to be easier than this. it really, you know, and it's so frustrating because you get all these people that want to complain about things in communities. Well, what about this? What about that? But then when you ask them to contribute, oh no, I gotta watch the Jersey Shore. Sorry, I don't have time.
I've been there myself, man. I've seen that. We live in a day and age where people are wrapped up on the internet now. This is how they communicate. This is how they socialize. And what you were referring to earlier, people were volunteers for everything. They got involved. They got involved with the churches. They got involved with the American Legion, with the VFW. Got involved with the Elks Lodge or the Masons, but they got involved in some way or another, and they were contributors to society. And that was part of their way of socializing. The Rotary Club, things like that. Nowadays, people, you know, it's right here in front of you. It's a screen. Hey, how you doing? You wave to each other on a screen, and you call that socialization, and it's really just not the same anymore.
Right. I mean, we live in a day of outrage culture. And of course, you know, the people who actually do things, you know, in person, show up and actually try to get stuff done. You have several people that want to show up and just complain about it. And it's like, meanwhile, before I showed up and was actually doing anything, it could be like cleaning a ditch out. You know, I show up, start cleaning a ditch. 5 people show up to complain about it. And if I hadn't shown up, the ditch would never gotten cleaned out, though. And that's, we have outrage culture. People want to complain about everything you do, how you're doing it, but won't get their hands dirty themselves. And that's what we got to fix.
Wait a minute. Now, one of those 5 guys had to be your director, right? They showed up just to tell you how to do the ditch.
You know, you drive by any construction site, you know, how many people are standing on shovels? You know, those are your supervisors, right?
Yeah, they're all supervisors.
Yeah, one guy digging.
I've worked on a few construction sites. I didn't see a whole lot of standing around. Maybe in those DOT sites, I don't know.
Yeah, so mostly it is DOT construction that you catch them like, yeah, hey, there's the supervisors. They're all standing on a shovel or on their phone these days, right?
All on their phone.
Yep, sitting around scrolling. You see them on construction sites scrolling. Shouldn't we be digging? Shouldn't we be doing something, grading, whatever, standing out of the way?
They're waiting for the pipe layer to come in and tell them where the pipe is, where they can dig around it and stuff. So until he arrives, man, our hands are tied. We are getting paid by the hour.
Yeah, they should have already marked that off before you even rolled any construction equipment on site, right? Shouldn't that have been marked?
Should have been. I mean, them little blue flags and red flags and yellow flags you see on the side of the road actually mean something. Don't pick those flags.
They do not pick them up. Yeah, and the little lines, and of course the different markings and stuff mean something. I couldn't pick it out. It looks like Klingon to me, but you know, the people that know understand.
Yeah, they do. They have different colors of paint and stuff. They mark arrows and stuff in the direction of the pipe and stuff like that. For sewage.
And you look at a little thing that I've watched somebody mark those, and it's like, what are you doing? It's like, it looks like you're just making weird, you know, X's and O's or whatever. And it's like, no, this means this means that. It's an actual language, and it's like,
they know what they're doing. My thing about it is, why are they laying all the pipe underneath the asphalt? Now you guys just laid fresh asphalt. You're gonna go dig up the asphalt to get to the pipe, and then you're not gonna put the asphalt down to match up what was already there. So when we drive over, we all get our cars beat the crap out of.
This is what we call one hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing. So people plan one project, they have another project, they don't use common sense to apply. So a recently laid road gets torn up to put cable in, and then the road is messed up for years until it's completely resurfaced.
Yeah, it stinks. I've done it, man. I've worked jobs where we just laid fresh asphalt. A couple weeks later, I'm back there doing another job for something else, and I'm looking at this road. They just carved a whole, big long line out of it. I'm like, we just laid that.
Mm-hmm.
It's expensive too, by the way. It's not cheap to lay asphalt.
Yeah, but the good thing about asphalt is it's recyclable. You can, for most of the part, you can recycle.
Reuse it.
We got mountains of what they call wrap.
Yeah.
It is actually, if you get wrap, if it's been crushed real fine, it works great. You can lay it down in place of say 3/4 stone or 3/8 stone, whatever you might be using for your drive or park area or whatever. You lay that wrap down and pack it. That stuff is almost like having fresh laid asphalt. It'll look good too.
Yeah, I was in the Åland Islands, which is part of Finland. It's on the west coast, off the west coast of Finland. It was settled by Swedes. It's still 90% Swedish speaking, even though it's part of Finland. And it's red granite that was underground and that was raised up, about 8,000 years ago and then inhabited by peoples. Anyway, the roads are all made out of red granite. So you're driving down the road, looks like you're one of those tennis courts, that are those red tennis courts. It's pretty wild. Very durable. It's crushed red granite, and it's just the roads are all red, so it's pretty fascinating. It's a lot more appealing in nature than driving around on the black roads you're so accustomed to. But it was a really unique experience. I really enjoyed it. Fascinating stuff to drive on those red granite roads.
Do you know how they manufactured it? I mean, you're talking about crushed stone, right?
Yeah,
Did
just
did
crush
they mix
the
it with some sort of asphalt or tar?
No,
Or something
obviously some asphalt
bind
goes
it?
into it to bind it. Yeah, it's not just, otherwise it'd just be gravel laid down the road. But
Yeah.
I mean, it still comes out looking red. I mean, it's pretty wild.
I wonder what they
You know,
use to bind it. That kinda sounds interesting.
I don't know, oatmeal. Come on, man. Don't
No,
ask me those
oatmeal.
technical questions like this. How do I know? Just know it works. And
Know it
it's
works,
up
huh?
at it's in Scandinavia. So, obviously it survives the cold weather because it survives winters up there. But very fascinating place I went to there. I was there in September. They have something called Skurdefest. Skurdefest. That's their fall festival. And they've got these apple orchards, which are way up in the north, and amazing apples. And anyway, so it's like a farmer's fest. And I would drive around from little town to little town. And people like, because they're my English, they're like, oh, you're from America. What are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, I came for Skurdefest. They're like, what? You came all the way here for our farm festival? Like, well, yeah, it's famous. We've heard all about it. Not.
It's not like Oktoberfest, I take it.
No, it's not like Oktoberfest. No, it's kind of like, let's say it's fall in New England and the leaves are changing. And that's kind of what it was. September, a little bit earlier, they change. And you go out and you drive to local orchards or dairies, and people got cheeses there, an exhibition. And, some people have their old timey cars and tractors out, and kids, wander around and have popcorn and balloons, like a county fair, but at each farm sort of thing. And occasionally in the center of a little town. It was kind of cool. I did that in when was it? 2012, I think it was. It was amazing. I had a good time. I had no idea that Skurdefest was going on. I just wanted to go to the Öland Islands because I'd never been there. And it was well worth the trip.
So it was like a bonus.
It was definitely a bonus. And it was kind of fun telling the people from the islands that I was there for the festival because they got a kick out of it. It was pretty amazing. But it was an interesting trip. That's one where I had flown from Germany up through Belgium and into Stockholm, stayed on like a bed and breakfast overnight sort of thing, which was a famous yacht owned by one of the famous heiresses back in the 1920s, an American heiress, now owned by folks in Sweden, owned by the Swedish government for a while. Anyway, but so stayed there overnight and then got on a cruise ship with my rental car and went through the channels there over to the Öland Islands, across the what is that? Anyway, it's not the Baltic, but it's the northern part of the Baltic there, the Gulf of Bothnia, I think it is. Anyway, I went over there and then got off the next day, and it's pretty cool. But when I was on the ship there, I'd gotten an email because they had Wi-Fi. It was early days of Wi-Fi on ships, and because they were still getting off the towers in the channels there, and it said that my genealogical my DNA test results came in. I've been waiting for them from Ancestry.com, and like, okay, here it is. Open it up. You're an alien. No, I was waiting to see what it's going to tell me. You're from Alpha Centauri. No. It's confirmed what my DNA research or my genealogy research had been saying all those years. It was pretty cool. And so that was one of the highlights of the trip. Had nothing to do with the trip, just really exciting news when it came in there. So yeah, I never forget that. Fantastic trip. I'd like to go back sometime, but that's a bit of a hike from here. It'd have to be in conjunction with some other trip that gets me to Europe, and then I'd go up there, sort of thing. But a beautiful location. And of course, there's hundreds of islands. And so the main mode of transport, of course, is a ferry between islands. There's some bridges for the close ones, but many of them have ferries between them. So it's pretty cool. I really, really enjoyed it. Fascinating place. It's a really well-kept secret. Most people don't know about it. It's one of those places not full of foreign, illegal immigrants because they don't know about it. Plus, it's too cold.
Right. Yeah. Plus, you can't just walk across, one of those fjords or anything.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised. People find a way to go in the most unusual places, no matter how hard they are to reach. So anyway, but it was a fascinating experience, and I really enjoyed it. But that was, gosh, like I said, that was some time ago. But here we are now on the verge of war.
So what's going on with Ukraine and Russia? I mean, we're hearing all about Iran and we don't hear any Ukraine and Russia. I mean,
we've moved on from that one.
Yeah, no.
I mean, is the war just mysteriously in? It's like Putin's like,
Ukraine,
darn it, the Ayatollah just took our
no, Ukraine. That's so Joe Biden. Who cares about that? The Ukraine, we don't care. We're not giving them missiles or tanks or things anymore. So they're just, they just have to hang on their own. No, look, it's the forgotten conflict. Gaza will soon become a forgotten conflict. This Iran thing is going to overshadow everything.
That only becomes forgotten until they attack again.
Well, I don't think they have the capability to do that at this stage, and the Israelis got it pretty much in hand. But
I'll give them 20 years; they'll be back. They seem to like it. I don't know what it is about them. They just seem to like it. Like I said, maybe it's not religion; it's more of a cult. I don't know.
That's a fair
You know.
point, but that's not going to go over well in certain quarters.
Well, I was going to say there are people out there that are Muslims who believe in peace. I understand that. So I'm not trying to be too insulting and attack everybody for the religious beliefs. I'm just saying when you see somebody from an Islamic state that acting under jihad and stuff, that's not. To me,
So,
that's
John-
not. Those individuals are not acting under a religious belief. I don't think you would classify that as religion in that regard.
I have a serious question for you, John. So when you say you're trying to be not too insulting, so you're just a little bit insulting?
Yeah, it was. Well, I kind of thought maybe after I said that to her, I'm like going, there probably might be people out here in Nashua, New Hampshire, or even Lowell, Massachusetts, or somewhere that go, hey, wait, I take exception to that, but I got a point. And I'm going to stand by that. But, I understand that people also have their own beliefs and stuff. And it's like Baptist, I don't like your religion over here in this church. So I'm going to create my own Baptist church over there. And we're going to change some things around a little bit. I'm sure there's some Muslims that are like, hey, no, listen, we're honest. We're not into that. We gotten away from that. We walked away from it. We just want to be peaceful. And
There are many millions of them that are that way for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's been a lot of good people, man, that fought over there in Afghanistan and Iraq. And they went back to fight some more because they've learned the culture. They've met a lot of people over there, and they really fell in love with the people and an understanding of those people. So I understand not everybody thinks that way.
Oh, for sure.
Well, no, it's a small minority of people behave in that fashion. It's unfortunate, but there are people out there that are that way. And it's across faiths and across societies, unfortunately.
But
the problem is,
it's the peaceful I'll say non-crazies that get, the peaceful non-crazies don't get any press. You don't hear from them. They're just doing their jobs. Kind of like Republicans. We're going to work every day. We're trying to do stuff. We're not out protesting. So you don't hear about Republicans, but you hear about the Democrats out protesting because they're the ones out making news, basically. 9 to 5ers and people just living their lives don't make news, really.
If it bleeds, it leads, man.
That's true. If
you go commit jihad and blow something up, you're newsworthy. You're in there. Congratulations, you just made mainstream media.
You show up and you open up a clinic or open up an orphanage. Well, guess what? You may get hit some local news, but that's about it. Yeah,
it's a feel good story for the local paper. You might
for the
make
local paper,
like
right?
6th, 7th page or something.
Right. Yeah,
if they even print press anymore, I don't know.
Yeah, print's pretty much dying off here. It's in its last throes.
I know some older people, us geezers that still like the feel of that paper in their hand.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it, but
pages and they want to walk away with that. Remember the ink on your fingers?
Mm-hmm, right. Yeah, but I remember back in the day growing up, whenever that paper was thick, and it could be used as a weapon against you too. So if you got in trouble,
how many dogs got it on the snout with the daily newspaper? I mean, you do business on this floor, little one. You're getting it good right here. The paper in my hand, all rolled up and ready to go.
Right, it just pop you one, even though it never really hurt, but they get you. You thought it was going to hurt you, and you run away laughing.
The message was got across. That's what counted.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Correct.
My dad with that belt, he had some talent. I'm telling you what, man, that belt can come through those loops with one hand, caught with that same hand, and full swing, all one motion.
Yep.
Maybe
absolutely.
you guys didn't experience that. What, you guys like neglected as children? What's going on?
No. We just weren't beaten. We just weren't beaten like you.
I assumed you were going to tell us more of your horrible childhood. I was waiting to hear more.
Well, we were. What's the word I can use on radio to describe the type of children we were? Let's just say we were uncontrollable. We were out there. I was talking to my brother about that today. We had minds of our own and did what we want to do and run the neighborhood.
Well, before we go tonight, guys, get away from your neighborhood thing there real quick. Sorry, because we're going to run out of time here shortly. President Trump has approved the attack plan for Iran. He just hasn't given the go order. So whatever course of action we have against Iran is approved and is awaiting execution. So all it takes is a go order. Well, Ayatollah Khamenei, are you paying attention? 86-year-old fart.
He gave that warning and said, get out of Tehran. And people are leaving. And he gave an attack order here just, tonight? I'm thinking you just saw this?
This afternoon. Late this afternoon. It's been confirmed by multiple sources. I was waiting for a couple more sources. And while we're chatting here, I came up with it. Multiple sources now confirmed that in the Situation Room, he did approve the attack plan, not the order to give it.
Right.
He's approved the plan. So look, I mean, last night he put unconditional surrender on his truth report. So truth social, excuse me. So yeah, I mean, in all caps, I mean, it shouldn't be any clearer. It looks like regime change is the order of the day in Iran, and only 45 years too late.
Yeah.
45, exactly. You got that right.
Well, it might be nice for people in Iran to be able to, for women to be able to dress like ladies again and do the things they used to do in the 1970s prior to the Ayatollah. And
just go to a class and listen to, somebody teach you something. I mean, come on, just that.
Yeah.
They can't even do that.
It's ridiculousness. I mean, they've really went to the Stone Ages since the Ayatollah, and it's been, and I guess since then they've been funded Mideasterners to attack enemy combatants.
Yeah, it's odd because we've gone from Khomeini to Khamenei, and who's next? Kadami?
Kadami, yeah.
I thought they were all Khomeini. What is it? It was an Ayatollah they all use now. The supreme leader.
No, Ayatollah is the religious title, but the name for the first guy was Khomeini, and this one's Khamenei, both of whom were exiled to France. Why are the French taking these radical Islamists in their midst and giving them succor? Otherwise, if they hadn't done that, these idiots wouldn't have been able to go back and destroy Iran in 1979. But they did, and we're still living with the disaster of the Jimmy Carter era. Look at this. Carter's gone, and we're still dealing with it.
Yeah. Yep. Shows you the importance when you're electing a president. If you do have a truthful election and your vote actually counts, it's very important on who you're picking, and it's good to have a choice, not who they decide to choose for you.
It's a good reminder that elections, as Barack Obama said, have consequences.
Yeah, which means you don't just need to be voting in general elections, vote in your party primaries as well, or caucuses, whatever your state has. Get involved in those as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, the local elections are the ones that really have the biggest impact. Most people don't even realize that.
Absolutely. I mean, look at how many places are raising taxes this year, and a lot of them are controlled by Republicans, raising taxes 20-25% some places.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our show. It's been a great 2 hours. We've enjoyed having you on here with us tonight. We'll hope you join us again next week while we do it all over. And have yourself a good week until you listen to WSMN. And we are gone.
WSMN